JJ the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. This just in, hot off the press. Dear Western, with the future looking to include an increase in IRS audits, I want to ensure my business clients have all the documentation required. However, I'm finding conflicting information on what that is. So, what do you recommend? Well, this is a great question, and I actually have been talking with my clients about this recently and annually. And really what it comes down to is this: you can't have too much documentation. And so in talking with my clients, what I say is, listen, let's not look at what can I get away with in terms of the least amount of documentation, but let's ensure we have complete documentation. So a couple of things to note here is that I'm going to give you a link to the IRS website where they talk about this very issue. And really what it comes down to is, for a business, and in this specific circumstance, we're going to be thinking about a business that files a separate tax return from that individual, as well as then a sole proprietorship, those that are filing a Schedule E with real estate activities, or filing a Schedule F. The reason I wanted to separate all of that out is to say, no matter the business, these would be the same requirements. So first and foremost, you would want to have a detailed receipt to document what it was that the business paid for. It's actually not good enough to just have a receipt to show the total that was paid to a specific vendor. It needs to show the detail of what was actually bought. Next, you need to show and prove that the business paid for it. So if we are now talking about an S Corp return, a partnership return, or an S Corp, what we want to look at here is ensuring that that separate entity that files a separate and distinct tax return from the individual has actually paid for this. So how do we prove that? Well, it would be with bank statements if this is by check or a debit card where the bank account used in the business paid directly that vendor for that business expense. Now, if it is being paid by a credit card, then you would need the credit card statement to show that that receipt was then tied to that credit card. And then you would want to have the bank statement showing that that bank account for the business paid for that credit card's expenses. Now, if you are a sole proprietor, you're filing Schedule E, you're filing Schedule F, you may not have a separate business account because that is not required, because there's not a separate and distinct tax return for your business. However, you would still want to be able to show that you paid for it. So you would want your bank statements in which you paid for these expenses and the credit card statements in which you charged these tied to then the bank account showing that you paid for it. So what we've got to really be able to document here is that this was a business expense, and in detail, what was that business expense and that you paid for it. So with this, how long should you keep these documents? Well, could be different opinions on that. However, the standard answer would be 7 years. We know that there is a 6-year statute for the IRS to come and review, audit, if you will. Now, of course, there's different provisions for them to go beyond 3 years. We know if there is fraud, it can be longer than the 6-year period. But in general, what we're telling our clients is to keep your documents for 7 years. Now, in this day and age of digital and being able to scan receipts, we take it one step further with our clients because we tell them in the app of the software that we use inside of our practice for our client management, they can scan that receipt by simply taking a picture of it on their phone and uploading it to our portal, and they are able to label it, put details with it, and then we have an actual electronic copy of that receipt, as well as doing the same with bank statements. So whether you're tracking that or your client's tracking that, that is a wonderful way to actually gather up these documents without it filling up the closet or the garage. So with that, if you have questions, email dearwestern@westerncpe.com.